Welcome to another episode of the DNA of Purpose podcast. Now, about a month ago, I had the privilege of speaking for Smartsheet, an amazing work management platform that's recognized globally. Now, while Smartsheet is all about tech, their true mission is to unlock human purpose and potential. Spending time with their team and their incredible clients made me realize just how much they focus on enhancing what makes us truly human, our ability to connect, to communicate, and of course, to collaborate. Seeing their technology in action was truly inspiring, but what stood out even more for me was the people behind it. The Smartsheet team were warm, welcoming, and world-class in every way. It was a reminder that at the end of the day, it's all about human touch, and that is really what makes the difference. And this brings me to today's conversation. In an age where we're all trying to figure out how technology can support and amplify what is truly human, while also understanding what it takes to lead in an era of rapid progress, I knew that today's guest could offer some valuable insights into thriving in this new world. His name is Nigel Mendonca, and he has spent the last 2 decades inspiring teams and scaling digital platforms from the ground up. Today, he is the Vice President for Asia Pacific at Smartsheet. He joined the company in January 2020 and has over 20 years of experience in sales and general management roles across various technology companies in both Australia and Asia. Welcome to the podcast. It is such a pleasure to have you joining me today, Nigel.
Thanks, Rebecca. Nice to be here.
Now, I'm going to kick off with a question that I ask all of my guests, and it's really, I guess, a question within a question. What I would like to know is, what question are you asking yourself that is currently guiding your life or your work forwards?
Yeah, I think one thing that I regularly try and ask myself on both the personal and a work front is, how am I doing? And it might sound like a really simple question, but I think it's layered. On a personal front, I ask myself, how am I doing mentally? How am I doing physically? How am I doing in my relationships with friends, with family, with my kids, with my wife? Might extend to how am I doing with my financial goals and things like that. And then obviously the answers to that question that you ask yourself then helps you kind of set some goals and gives you direction in terms of any changes that you might want to make, and being honest with yourself. And same with on the work front, is my work challenging? Is it fulfilling? How are my relationships at work with my peers, with my team members, with my boss? Am I meeting expectations? Is it enjoyable? And, the answers to all those questions then also help you make any changes that you think you need to along the way. I think I'm a big believer that no one's ever the finished product, and you should always be looking to challenge yourself to make changes where, in line with what your goals are.
I love that. I think so often in leadership, the focus can swing to, how we influence others. And yet it could be true to say that the most profound influence is the influence that we have over ourselves. And we can't really influence how we show up in the world unless we cultivate that level of self-awareness and the ability to connect with, how we're feeling, at what level we're performing, and how we're showing up in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of like that analogy of when you're on an airplane and you watch the safety video and it says if there's an emergency, pull the oxygen mask down and put it over you, fit it to yourself first, because you can't help other people if you're not healthy.
So true. Nigel, today, as I mentioned in the intro, you are the Vice President and General Manager of Smartsheet, a global enterprise work management platform that places you right at the intersection of cutting edge technology and human potential. I'm curious to know, when you look back across, your younger years, was there a specific big breakthrough or a turning point moment that really catalyzed your purpose as a leader today?
Yeah, I think probably, I mean, there's probably been a few and numerous points along the way, but one that definitely stands out that was pretty pivotal in my career and gave me a ton of experiences that I still channel today is back in 2005, pretty much out of the blue, I was working for a company here, a tech company here in Sydney, and my boss called me into his office one day and said, "Hey, how do you feel about moving to Hong Kong to lead the business in our business in Hong Kong, lead our Asia business across, that entire geography, but yeah, move the family to Hong Kong." And that was a bit of a surprise. Hadn't even thought about doing anything like that, but yeah, I went home and spoke to my wife about it, and we had a 2-week-old child at the time, so lots of things to think about. But we decided to embrace it, and what that did was really open my eyes to so many different life experiences, and gave me a ton of work experiences, like really valuable professional experiences that I never would have had access to. That has definitely shaped my thinking and my experience. Really, I think reinforced the value, the importance of investing in relationships. Doing business in a professional sense in Asia, in different Asia markets, is very different to working in the Australian market, and it is very relationship driven, and you work with a lot of partners, and even on the customer side, it's very relationship driven, and every market is different as well. And there's language differences and cultural differences and lots of different things like that. But if you embrace it, it's really fascinating, and it helps build your understanding and appreciation of diversity, and really understanding what makes people tick, and the psychologies, and all those different things. But even on the personal level, it was just my wife and I. We didn't know anyone in Hong Kong, and we really relied on each other for that period of time, until we got to know other people socially, and then developed, some of my strongest friendships that I have today come from that period. And you rely on people as family in a home away from home scenario as an expat. So yeah, all of that probably helped shape the person and the leader that I am today. And that's probably nearly 20 years ago.
Mm. Nigel, you just mentioned the diversity and inclusion piece. What I'm curious to know is that, as someone who has spent so much of your time really inspiring people to perform, inspiring your teams to step into new levels of potential, what did you observe in relation to the differences between, say, how you would inspire a team in an Australian culture versus an Asian culture? What were the differences, and what were you able to take away from that experience?
Well, I mean, look, there's a couple that are probably a little bit fairly obvious. Australians tend to be a little bit more outspoken and confident and willing to share their thoughts openly than many folks in Asian cultures. They're a little bit more, reserved, and it takes a little bit to sort of get the feedback out of them, that get them feeling comfortable and confident to share feedback openly. And so again, developing those relationships and trust is really important. And I think I got some really good advice before I moved to Hong Kong from someone, and that was develop respect by doing, show up and show people that you're prepared to roll up your sleeves and work alongside them, and do the things that that you're asking them to do. Don't just sort of direct orders at people, and really that'll develop respect. And so doing that, I developed not only, I think, respect as a leader, but also friendships, really good friendships, which builds trust. And I think I think trust is a really strong basis of any really successful professional relationship as well. To be able to provide honest feedback in a way that people know that you're coming from a good place. You're giving them feedback because you care about them and because you think it's important. And you wouldn't be giving that feedback if you didn't feel like it was going to be helpful for them or necessary. Really, if you didn't care about them, you may not give the feedback, or you do it in a different way, and inviting feedback back the other way as well.
Yeah, it's about allowing that foundation to be built so that when you do give that feedback, people inherently understand that your intention is always in their best interest.
Yep, absolutely. And I think providing feedback in the right way, in a very timely manner, in an honest way as well, and setting those expectations up front as well with people, that that there will be times where you need to separate professional and personal relationships, and that's that really is inherent in both of us doing our job to the best of our ability. That's what is required. So if I give you some feedback that you may not necessarily like, it doesn't mean that I don't like you as a person.
Nigel, reflecting on your extensive experience, it's clear that you've dedicated years to the digital space. And this has been a period marked by continuous advancements and significant breakthroughs. The coming decade promises even greater scale and impact. So, as someone who has consistently been at the forefront of these changes, what have you observed or cultivated in others that you believe to be the most powerful mindset for managing such rapid change?
I think the things that I tend to lean on and try and instill in others is positivity and resilience. Change is a constant in life in general, in the technology industry. Change is really, change is what drives our industry. And being positive and embracing change, and I guess this I know this will resonate with you, Rebecca. Being adaptable. Having that adaptability quotient is high. Adaptability quotient is absolutely critical to thrive and succeed in the technology industry. So I always, really encourage people to embrace opportunities, to be really curious, to continuously look for opportunities to learn. It goes back to asking those questions: how am I doing? But also control your own destiny. Really take control of your life, take control of your career. Often you hear people, it's not uncommon to hear people in a professional setting talk about professional development and have an expectation that the company that they're working for or their manager will develop them professionally. Well, I think there's an element of that in any good organisation and any good manager, but ultimately it's up to the individual to take control of their own professional development and be proactive and call out what they're looking to do, and seek out the right people for those conversations, and really take control of your destiny. And the same probably applies to making career changes and identifying new opportunities that might seem a little bit daunting if you don't understand them or don't take the time to understand them. But if you do, there is opportunities for people to, improve or drive career opportunities and those sorts of things with certainly new technologies like AI is a great example of that.
Yeah, I love that. As you can imagine, I've had hundreds of conversations now in relation to how one goes about, discovering their purpose in reflection of this podcast. And I've always found it fascinating that people often talk about purpose, whether it be personal purpose or workplace purpose, through this lens of I'm waiting for my purpose. And it's kind of, it speaks to what you've just said, that, well, you've got to stop waiting. You've got to show up. You've got to choose it. And even if it changes and evolves, unless you show up, unless you make that decision to lean in, you're never going to be able to create meaning in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got an 18-year-old son who's in first year uni, and he doesn't really know what he's what he wants to spend the rest of his life doing. And my advice to him is that's perfectly fine. I'm still figuring it out.
That's right. Yeah.
And so doing something is better than doing nothing. And just use your time, find something that captures your interest, and do that for as long as it captures your interest. And trying things on and deciding that they're not right for you, that's progress, right? Because you've eliminated one thing, and that's a step in the right direction as well.
100%. While talking about the mastery of skills, there are two skills that you have cultivated consistently across the course of your career: your ability to inspire people and your knack for scaling a business from the ground up. What key attributes are essential for effectively inspiring a team, and how do you harmonize this with the strategic insights necessary for successful business growth?
I think in terms of key attributes that I think are essential for inspiring a team, that I think the number one thing from my point of view is authenticity. And that helps sort of build trust as well, and showing people who you are as a person allows it kind of simplifies things a lot, right? It allows you to show up as really your own self, and not have to kind of build a facade when you come to work. But also, it helps other people understand who you are and how to engage with you as well in the best possible way, and helps build those relationships and the trust and all that sort of stuff. But if you show up with authenticity in a leadership sense, in terms of inspiring a team, for me personally, like, I'm a positive person, generally speaking. I'm a glass half full kind of a person. I'm always looking for ways to move forward and learnings from previous challenges or setbacks or opportunities missed. So for me personally, showing up with positivity in those circumstances, I'm not putting on an act. And I think people know that I'm not putting on an act. Sometimes they might think I'm a little nuts, that I see positivity in certain situations that might be a little bit hard to see, but I truly believe it. I wouldn't, say something to a group of people that I didn't truly believe. And, I think that's what leadership is, in my view, is about: moving forward and finding a solution, helping provide a path or a pathway or a strategy for people to move forward, to give them direction, even when things are challenging, probably especially when things are challenging. So I think that's probably one of the key attributes, I would say, is authenticity, but also credibility. And credibility comes from not just saying things, but being able to give examples, whether that's a life example or whether that is pointing to some data or some insights, or examples of things that you've seen that helps, again, build that credibility and helps people sort of, believe and follow along.
Nigel, I'm curious to know, and I am going down a few rabbit holes here, so bear with me.
No problem.
But I'm really curious to know, in diving into the authenticity piece, regardless of whether we are in leadership or whether we are employees, the nature of remote working, as an example, has kind of dissolved the silos between how we show up in the workplace versus how we show up at home. And so in this sense, we are almost being forced to embody a more authentic version of ourselves. at the same time, we still need to cultivate boundaries around that because, just because we're having a bad day and the kids are running amok at home and all of those things, we still need to be able to show up with a level of professionalism in order to be able to maintain the credibility that you just referenced. So
Yes.
I'm really curious to know that, yes, authenticity is super, like, really important, but at the same time, how do we cultivate boundaries that allow us to operate in these different spaces, even though the silos between them are dissolving more and more?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, one of my observations as we all went through the COVID period and everyone
Yeah.
working, working remotely and all that sort of stuff, I actually loved um, the the more personal approach to working with people, and often people that you don't know. You get to see the inside of their office, or you get to see their pets or their kids or those sorts of things. And I feel like people are a little less uptight about life, about life challenges or twists and turns that happen. Somebody knocking on the front door and people excusing themselves to go answer the door. That's totally fine, right? No problem. So I think what that in my mind, what that taught people was that, work doesn't have to be this perfect thing, this perfect. You can be professional without everything being polished and tied up in a bow and 100% perfect. Because in most instances, people's work is not perfect. There's challenges all the time. Every business, no matter how well run it is always going to have challenges from time to time, and that sort of existence of the unexpected things happening and the personal nature of it. I think it humanizes business a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I think the boundaries thing is important. One of the things, as you can see right now, I'm in the office. Well, you can probably tell I'm in the office. This is not my home. um, um, and I quite enjoy, it's a very personal thing, but I quite enjoy getting out of home and getting into the office at least a few days a week, because I like the separation between work and home. When I'm at home, I do find that the lines are quite blurred, and I like to be able to walk out of the office and kind of know that for the most part, that work day is done, and I can sort of commit my time to home and family or friends or exercise or whatever it might be. Whereas if I'm working from home, those lines are a little bit more blurred. I think in terms of setting boundaries with other people, though, one of the best things you can do is actually is talk to people about their expectations. Because I also don't think it's completely fair to say, well, I'm never going to reach out to this person via any means of communication after 5 p.m. because that would be encroaching on their personal boundaries, because they might be that might stress people out more. They might, for example, need some assistance at a period in time, and if you never do that, then they might think they can never reach out to you, and maybe you don't want to do that. I think the best thing you can do is have a conversation with the key individuals in your team, and sort of almost develop a designed alliance, right? Like what is it? What is the communication cadence that you prefer, Rebecca, and what do I prefer, and how should we handle certain situations? How do you like feedback? How do I best sort of distill feedback and receive it as well, and then sort of agree on the way that you will communicate with one another, and what are your boundaries and those sorts of things. And it doesn't have to be super formal, but I think having a conversation about that will help develop your relationship with that person to a level that is, that you're both pretty comfortable with, which might be very, very different to how you relate to somebody else in your team.
Mm, mm. Again, it speaks to the power of cultivating those relationships, because what I'm hearing from you is that every relationship is going to have its own unique set of set of boundaries, set of criteria, and that to really nourish those relationships, it's really about taking the time to really understand each other, to
Yep.
put all of those things on the table. Nigel, I'm going to move into my next question. You just referenced the pandemic, which was obviously a time of great change, but really today that's old news in that we're also riding the waves of course, artificial intelligence, the move towards more regenerative business practices. And as a result, we're also seeing an evolution in the nature of human potential.
Mhm.
With all of the things you have traversed through as a leader, if you could give yourself, your younger self, one piece of advice, what would you say to the younger version of Nigel?
I think I would say I would tell myself to enjoy the journey. You know, and I think I have enjoyed the journey, but I would just reinforce that to say to say embrace it for all that it offers, take opportunities, even if it takes you outside of your comfort zone. Sometimes opportunities come in ways that are not immediately obvious, and you might look at something and think, I'm not sure about that. That looks like either a sideways move or even a step back. But sometimes those things there can be sort of silver linings in those things, and they can really help you along your journey and help develop you. But we spend so much of our life at work and with the people that we work with. For most people, if you're working, even if you're in your own business, you're typically working with other people day in, day out. So, enjoying the people that you work with, whether they're team members or customers or partners or whatever, that's so important to, that I think that shapes the enjoyment and fulfillment that we get out of our lives. I think I'm a big believer that, work and life is, it's intertwined, and your happiness in one or the other reflects or sort of bleeds into the other. They're not necessarily, in my view, two totally separate things. You can, you can certainly have boundaries. I'm not talking about spending all your social life with people that you work with. I'm just talking about the influence of your degree of happiness or fulfillment in one part of your life, having an impact on the other part of your life. So, yeah, enjoying the journey and the people that you work with and being intentional about that and making changes if things are not making you happy, I think is really important, and one thing that I would always reinforce with younger Nigel.
Love it. Nigel, there are numerous aspects of your role at Smartsheet that I'm eager to dive into today. However, before going there, I really want to revisit a conversation we had a few weeks ago, and it was about the sabbatical that you took prior to joining Smartsheet in August of 2023. You mentioned how pivotal that time was for your journey ahead. Now, as a high demand leader, I think it's easy to jump from one opportunity to the next without pausing. Yet you emphasize the importance of embracing the spaces in between to fully align with your new purpose. Could you share with me how this period of reflection has shaped your leadership approach and vision for Smartsheet? And this is a double-barreled question, but the other thing I'd love to know is what about Smartsheet made it the right fit for you, and how did you come to that decision?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, I'd say I was in a really fortunate position to actually take some time out, and I spoke to my wife about it, and decided that for the first time in my career, I would like an extended break. I really felt like I wanted to take a decent period of time to the kind of role that I was in then, and the kind of role that I saw myself in the future, I knew would be pretty all encompassing, and so I felt like it would be good for me and good for my future employer for me to take some time out. And it was I guess, an ideal time to do it. The company I was working for had just been acquired, and so it was a perfect time for me to kind of make that decision to go and step into something new. But I knew that before I did that, I just wanted to take some time out. And one of the things that occurred to me was that on most occasions when you are looking at new employment opportunities, most occasions you're actually in a role, and if your role is all consuming, it's really difficult to commit the necessary time to go do your research and prepare for those discussions with the new organizations or potential organizations, and show up as your best self and all those sorts of things. And it's, that can be certainly very distracting for the role that you're in and not great, or obviously very time consuming. So yeah, I decided I was going to take 6 months out and go do some travel, did some travel with the family, did some travel with some friends, did some travel by myself, which was incredible. Incredible opportunity, especially because it was right before COVID and the world shut down. But it definitely helped me, help shape. First of all, it gave me confidence. Like once I committed to that, it gave me confidence to know that I had the support of my family, but also I was confident that I would find another role. I had some conversations with some folks, and I felt like I had plenty of options and choices and things like that. And so what it did was give me time to really properly assess what I wanted to do next, but also I probably started by thinking about what I didn't want to do, and used a bit of a process of elimination to say, well, I don't really want to. I'm looking for a role that doesn't look like this, or a company that doesn't look like this, or a stage of growth that doesn't look like this, or an industry, a sub-industry within the technology space that doesn't look like this, or whatever. And so I ruled out a bunch of things, but it still left what I felt like was a huge range of options as well. So I felt like I wasn't kind of narrowing my options too much. And then I stayed in contact just with people that would, that helped me make some connections. And then when I was ready to sort of go and have conversations again, I was really fortunate to identify some or be introduced to some organizations that were pretty exciting organizations. And I had maybe half a dozen or so of those, and sort of narrowed down to two what I felt were really exciting opportunities, but were quite different, and landed with Smartsheet. And I think I was really proud of myself for having the courage to do that, and I spoke to some people along the way that said, it's something I've always thought of doing, but I've always been too scared to do that, or haven't had the courage to sort of jump in and do it. Like I said, you have to be in the position to do it financially, I guess. So I'm very fortunate that I was. But once I made that commitment, I was really proud of myself for really committing to taking the right amount of time out, what felt like the right amount of time out for me. And then that made it all the more, I guess, certain for me that once I'd made the decision, that I'd really gone through a proper process, and I hadn't just jumped into the first thing that came along. And I'm a big believer that interviewing is a two-way street. You're being interviewed for a new role by the organization that you're talking to, but you should be interviewing them for what they can offer you, and whether they're a good fit, and their culture and the opportunities, and are you aligned with their vision and their leaders, and all of those sorts of things. And so ultimately what made it the right fit was the people that I met, the leadership that I met at Smartsheet. I had a lot of confidence that they were they were aligned with my values and their vision for this region. The Asia Pac region was aligned with what I was looking to do, and also my core skill set and experience that would help help drive success, but also the way of working, right? The expectations around the communication and the support, and what happens if we disagree on something, and are you looking for somebody who's just going to go and implement a cookie cutter approach that's been successful in the US, or are you looking for someone who is going to help sort of shape a local culture and bring that local expertise to help drive success in the local region? So they're all the things that really helped with that.
I love that story for two reasons. I mean, you've spoken about a very human transformation being what it takes to move from one job that has defined much of your identity to then give yourself the space to slow down enough to sit with potentially the discomfort of not knowing. And I think often we can hit that point of discomfort, and it's so easy just to replicate the patterns of the past, as opposed to really grounding in that and allowing yourself to sit in that space long enough to unbecome what you were, so that you can then make a very intentional decision about what you're becoming. And I also think there's so much to pick up from that just in relation to change in general. Like, again, we spoke to the human side of that, but even if you're innovating a new product or changing a system within an organization, to almost slow down enough to then move quickly and become more efficient, because you've slowed down enough to really detangle what's not working in order to be able to innovate and bring in the new, whatever that looks like. So thank you for sharing that, because I think there was some nuggets of gold in there.
No problem. There's a little restaurant in a little town in Japan that I went to a while back, and I always remember the name of the restaurant. I loved it. It's called Hurry Slowly.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly, really. I could have just said that. What a brilliant name. That said, I probably need to hurry quickly, or we'll be here for a few more hours. So my next question is simply this: what is Smartsheet? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, sure. Smartsheet is a work management platform. So we help organizations and people. We help them manage projects and processes and workflows and essentially get from point A to point B in their work, any type of work, more quickly and efficiently, and collaborate with all the people that they need to be successful. So good example of that is an organization like Foxtel, right? They have different parts of their organization. They've got Fox Sports, and they use our platform to help manage all of their live broadcast productions. They have over 50 live sporting events every weekend, and you can imagine all the coordination of all the internal and external stakeholders and the timetables and all that sort of stuff. So they use Smartsheet to collaborate and communicate and manage that fast-moving, ever-changing project schedule. But they also have their strategic projects that they use for mergers and acquisitions, and they use for launching new brands like Binge and KO and all those sorts of things. And they use our platform to sort of manage all of their strategic projects as well as their day-to-day projects on a daily basis.
Yeah, awesome. It's a great platform. I actually signed up before speaking with you guys so that I could get inside there and understand it. And I would recommend any of our listeners to do the same, because it's a really great way to really be able to connect the dots in your business and to be able to manage multiple projects and bring people in and collaborate and do all of the things. And it's incredibly intuitive too. So you guys have designed a really great platform.
Yeah, thank you. It's designed for non-technical people as well.
Yeah.
Is probably one of the key things. And we use, as you know, we use AI to help make it even more simple and easy to use. I think one of the things that is pretty evident today is that nearly everyone is a project manager, an informal project manager. I'm sure when you're organizing you're managing your podcasts and things like that, Rebecca, you treat each one of those as a mini project and all the production that goes with it and all that sort of stuff. But people don't think of themselves as project managers, so they don't. We need to provide people with tools and technology that speaks to the layman rather than the professional sort of professionally trained project manager.
Look, I think one of the things that Smartsheet has really offered a great solution for is how you might go about creating cohesion with remote working environments. Now, we already touched on some of the challenges associated with remote working, whether that be feeling a sense of isolation. And whilst Zoom calls are amazing, it doesn't always replace the energy of face-to-face interaction. What I'm curious to know is, given the solution that Smartsheet provides and your experience in managing your own team, how have you navigated that tension between the amazing flexibility that remote working provides, while at the same time the human need for belonging and connection and those face-to-face touch points?
I think for most organizations, I would probably say that there's room for both. And from our technology platform point of view, what we're trying to effectively do is help people make progress in their work, right? People typically feel more empowered and more engaged and more fulfilled if they feel like they're making progress at work. The thing that disengages and frustrates people the most is if they feel like they can't get stuff done, whether that's because they don't have the tools to do it, or their processes are really inefficient, or because they can't get hold of the people that they need to make decisions and move things forward. So, one of the things that we're really focused on and that I think is really valuable for organizations is the nature of working asynchronously as well. So, it's super valuable to get on to have a face-to-face meeting, whether that is in person, in an office, or whether that's on a Zoom meeting. There's a ton of value for that, because you get to have the conversations outside of the meeting and develop those personal relationships and the trust and all of those sorts of things. But it's also, most people would, I think, probably agree, it can be really difficult to get groups of people together, particularly for ad hoc meetings, whether that's across time zones or managing busy schedules or internationally or whatever it might be. And so I think the concept of moving things forward and collaborating without meeting face-to-face over a Zoom call or in person, that can be really empowering. And time kills innovation. And if you, as an organization or an individual, if you want to continue to innovate and make progress and feel like you're doing your best work, working asynchronously using any platform, doesn't have to be Smartsheet, but any platform that helps you collaborate with a team, provide feedback, understand where, what are the updates, provide updates on things, flag risks, trigger the next step in the process, help keep moving things along without having to meet face to face is, I think, super important. And that, coupled with, using the face-to-face meetings for the really important moments, I think those two things dovetail pretty nicely.
Do you find with your clients that the asynchronous collaboration tool actually helps people to come to consensus more quickly?
I think so.
I mean, obviously there's the time restraints, but I just mean the human aspect of getting everyone to agree.
Yeah, because I think what it also does is, if you set it up this way, it helps you decide. You can define what are the roles in coming to that decision as well, right? Who is the there's terms that people would be familiar with, like RACI. What are the roles involved in that? Are you an approver? Are you a decision maker? Are you just there to be informed? are you the actual driver of it? So there's things like that you can formalize to help, but it also, I think, when you capture all the feedback in a platform rather than having just a discussion as well, you get away from the situation that the loudest voice always wins or dominates as well. So I think there's multiple advantages of it for sure.
Yeah. And I imagine it flattens the hierarchy in terms of decision making as well, which is really where I think we should all be moving in terms of, organizational evolution is finding ways finding ways where every human feels valued and every voice matters.
Yep.
So let's have a quick chat about AI. I had a little bit of a look into Smartsheet's AI policy before speaking for you, and I was incredibly impressed about two things. Firstly, your ability to really address the ethical side of the implementation of AI in the Smartsheet platform, but also it felt really organic. It didn't feel like you were just kind of tacking on AI and going, whoa, here's the new toy, let's play with it. It felt like it was very much an integrated aspect of the platform that was built purely with the intention of enhancing a customer's experience.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's certainly how we're thinking about it. And, a lot of organizations and individuals would be thinking about it slightly differently. But from our point of view, we've been very intentional about leveraging AI to enhance the experience of our end users, who are human beings, right? So we believe very strongly that the coupling of technology and useful technology and human beings and the human mind is a really powerful combination. So we want to leverage technology and in particular AI to help enhance that, that experience and make that combination even more powerful, rather than develop an AI tool or product in its own right to go kind of, I don't know, create a new revenue stream or something like that. It's very much about reducing the barriers to leveraging technology even further. Our platform is a no-code platform. You don't need to know how to code or anything like that to use our platform. So the barriers are already, we think, pretty low. But our AI enhancements mean that you can now just put in a natural language prompt to say, here's what I'm looking to do, and it will build you a formula, for example, or that will help, sort of connect to give you the outcome that you're looking for. Or even from an insights point of view, you can put in a natural language prompt and ask a question, and it will produce a graphical representation of your data and give you the insights and make that valuable. So it just really reduces the time to get from A to B, reduces the barriers to getting to a useful outcome from a technology sort of configuration point of view as well, and really makes it more accessible to anyone and everyone in the workforce.
So, as a segue to that question, I was reading a great article the other day that was essentially saying that every CEO today needs to think like a CTO. And this means, in my view, you might be able to add to this, but embracing more agile, adaptive, and circular ways of thinking about business. One of the solutions that Smartsheet provides is simple but incredibly effective, and we've already spoken about it, which was the asynchronous collaboration. Based on your experience in implementing the collaboration tool, but also just more broadly speaking, your experience in scaling Smartsheet, what do you believe are the essential mindset tools a CEO needs in order to be able to think like a CTO?
I think as a business leader, most business leaders, I'm sure, would be fairly well versed on trends in the world, emerging trends in the world, and a lot of those emerging trends do tend to be technology focused. So that's a big part of it, at least. So as it relates to thinking like a CTO, really, if you're not looking to leverage technology and move forward, there's, it feels like there's a big missed opportunity there, right? It's almost like if you stand still, you fall behind, because most organizations are embracing that and moving forward. So, I think, again, it comes down to being curious, being well read about what's happening in the industry at large, or society at large, or your specific industry, and what are the emerging things that you can and how can you, goes back to what I was saying earlier on, rather than seeing those as threats, how can you leverage those and use those to your advantage and create opportunity out of those things. So I think that's a fundamental responsibility of leaders. But I think the other key thing that I think is very, very important is that leaders shouldn't think that they need to have all the answers themselves, right? Surrounding yourself with intelligent people and curious people and people that are very good at specific areas that they're employed to, or that you're engaging them to help with, they can provide a ton of ideas and opportunities and things like that. So asking questions and involving teams and creating different work streams and mini projects or tiger teams, whatever you want to call it, to take advantage of opportunities or to problem solve, and asking people even to step outside of their day-to-day job role for kind of specific initiatives. It helps people develop and feel appreciated and stretches them and bubbles up really, really, I think, important and impactful ideas for the leader as well.
So as we come towards the end of the conversation, Nigel, there's one last topic that I would like to address. In a recent article I read, you had mentioned that 80% of strategic transformation value is lost at the execution level, which is a real shame. It's quite a staggering statistic, especially considering that nearly every organisation should be undergoing strategic transformation to maintain relevance. In your view, why does this gap exist, and what skills or tools are essential to close it?
Yeah, so that was from a Forrester research report, and you're right, it is pretty staggering. And what it talks to is that, as you said, nearly every organization is undergoing some kind of strategic transformation. And normally that's led from either the executive team or the board, or a combination of both. It might be a strategy team in place. But what we see often through our customer base, and certainly what this article, the Forrester article, was talking about as well, and their research showed, is that those leadership teams can come up with what is could well be a very valid and impactful strategy, but then implementing that strategy and communicating that strategy and engaging all the relevant stakeholders to effectively go and execute against that. Excuse me, that can be a really difficult process, partly because often strategic initiatives encompass multiple functions within a business. They don't sit within one leadership structure or one part of the organization where everybody knows each other and has access to each other. Often they span multiple functions, and so there's a little bit of sort of misinformation, or the coordination of all of those teams together can be difficult, and the collaboration between those teams can be difficult. So there's not a single thread that sort of crosses across all of those. But then, even if those teams are on board, the folks that often the most impactful to implement these strategies are the sort of the general workforce, the people at the coalface, the masses of, probably the 80% of the employee base that are actually talking to customers on a day-to-day basis, or doing the work on a day-to-day basis, or ingrained in the processes, and those sorts of things. And if they don't understand why the work that they're doing, or how the work that they're doing feeds back and is relevant to the strategic initiatives of the organization, they just become lost. And they might be getting asked to do something, but they don't know why, and they don't know how, whether the work that they're doing is actually effective and helping them make progress. And they also often are being asked to do that work without the right sort of technology and tools to help them, be productive. They often feel like they're just being asked to work harder or do more with less, and they don't understand why. And then another really important part is that the leadership team that came up with the strategy and said, okay, let's go execute, they don't have visibility as to how well that strategy is playing out and how well it's being executed, either cross-functionally or at the edges of the business. And if something happens, which invariably does, it means that whether it's a change in the economy or something to do with the business that means that they need to actually change tact and take a different path, they don't have the visibility to pivot or to see what's happening and what's working and what's not, and when they need to pivot. They can't see around corners. But also, if they need to change, it's like turning the Queen Mary. It's a really, really big turning circle. Yeah. They can't be agile and nimble. So they're the key problems that probably feed into what the Forrester report was talking about in terms of that 80% of value being lost at the execution level.
So we've come to the last question today. It's one, again, that I ask all of my guests. What I'd love to know is, if you had access to the world's largest billboard, aside from a Smartsheet promotion, which I've seen a few incredible billboards in the airport, what would be the one sentence or phrase that you would put on that billboard, and why?
I would say choose positivity is probably what I would say. I mean, I think in all aspects of life, whether it's business or personal, for me, everyone has a choice to, things happen to you, things, experiences come along, opportunities come along, challenges come along. You can choose to be positive about those things and take advantage of them and really embrace them, and take risks and sort of embrace them. But even with challenges, you learn so much from challenges along the way. And people that have almost like a bit of a victim mindset and think, well, it's not fair, this shouldn't have happened to me, it's not my fault, etc., etc. I think there's a great opportunity for people to just choose to get something out of it and choose to sort of react to it with positivity and use it as a learning experience. And I don't know, look for the best in people as well. That's also a positive.
It's a big one, isn't it? And sometimes it's hard to do that. Like, it seems like a simple thing to say, but I think so often we come into situations with a level of distrust.
Yeah.
Where if you can actually flip that and just trust that most people are good and that they're doing the right thing and they're showing up with everything they've got, that it helps not only your world to be brighter, but it makes the world a brighter place.
Yeah, agree. And I think there's so many situations where you might I would personally rather put myself out there and take a risk and assume someone's got good intentions, and at the risk of possibly every now and then being disappointed, but embrace so many opportunities, more opportunities as a result of that, than looking at people through a cynical lens and saying, well, I'm not sure whether I completely trust that, therefore I'm not going to dip my toe in the water and give myself the opportunity to get a great experience. And you miss out on so many things in life if you have that attitude.
So the golden question, where can we learn more about Smartsheet?
Well, you can go to www.smartsheet.com. Is one of the things that you can do. There's a ton of information on our website for sure. As you said, there's plenty of information on billboards and trams and buses around the city and things like that, where there's QR codes, so you can get.
And now you've heard the voice of Smartsheet as well. We love that.
Correct.
Excellent. Nigel, it has been such a pleasure getting to know you, not only through the Smartsheet conference in Sydney and Melbourne, but also in the preparation to this podcast. I think you're not only a fantastic leader, you're an incredible human. And I've really enjoyed being able to hold space for today's conversation and to throw some questions at you and understand your journey in a little more detail. Your team are also world class. So if anyone is thinking about getting a bit of help in relation to project management and embracing the world of Smartsheet, the people in that organization are just world class. It's been a joy. So thank you for all of it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Rebecca, and likewise as well. You know, your talk that you did, your keynote that you did at our events, and the adaptability quotient, it was so perfect for what we're trying to stretch our customers to think about to improve their businesses and their teams. So yeah, really enjoyed working with you too.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me on the DNA of Purpose podcast.